No, I've been teaching. This is my 25th year, and I've been in Alabama for 9 years. I was in three different schools in Alabama, and then when I moved to Georgia 15 years ago, I've been at this school the entire time I've been in Georgia.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Everything Band, a podcast that features conversations with composers, conductors, and performers of music for winds and percussion. My name is Mark Connor. I'm a composer and educator, and each week I have the great fortune to speak with and share the stories and wisdom of musicians and leaders in the band community. I'm excited to announce that Everything Band has joined forces with several other music education-related podcasts to form the Music Teacher Development Podcast Network. The Muted Network provides support in the form of audio-on-demand programming designed by and for music educators. You can find more information about our network at mutedpodcasts.com. Before we begin, I'd like to thank all of you for listening. I appreciate your time and hope that you are finding value from these interviews. I rely on word of mouth and social media to bring the show to new listeners. If you think you know one or two people who might find these interviews useful, please let them know about it. You can also help by following me and sharing posts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Remember, help students live up to the best that is in them through music. And now, onto the episode and this week's guest, Myra Rhoden. Hi, Myra.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining me. I'm really honored to have you on the show.
It's a true pleasure. Thank you so much.
So, Myra, can you introduce yourself for the listeners and tell them why I'm interviewing you?
Well, I'm Myra Rhoden, as Mark said. I teach at Fayette County High School, which is located in Fayetteville, Georgia. Fayetteville is about 20 miles south of downtown Atlanta. So we are a bedroom community for a lot of people who work in the Atlanta area. I'm originally from Tuskegee, Alabama. So it's a small town, actually only about an hour and a half away from here. Best known for Tuskegee University and the Tuskegee Airmen, the same place. A very small town, grew up with a musical family, small high school, and I actually went back there to teach after I got my degree at the University of Alabama. I went from the University of Alabama to teach 3 years in Tuscaloosa. I taught middle school band there, all sixth graders all day long, and all sixth grade school in Tuscaloosa. Left there and taught in Tuskegee for 4 years at my high school. Left there and went to Lanier High School in Montgomery, Alabama, and then left Lanier High School to come here to Fayetteville, Georgia. And that's where I've been for the last 15 years.
Awesome. So I have a couple questions in there. So you were only a middle school band director for a short time?
Yes,
okay.
3 years.
3 years. Okay, so can you tell me about your musical family? You mentioned that, and so that seems to be a common thread.
Well, I was raised partially with my mom and my grandparents, and they all really wanted all of the children in the family to have a musical background, to take dance lessons, to take gymnastics, because you needed the flexibility, you needed the grace, and the music background was just something that we had to have. So everyone played an instrument. I am the only one that went on to make music a career, but all of us had a music background growing up. I played the clarinet in the high school band, but I started playing piano when I was much younger and singing in the church choir. My grandfather played for the church. I played for the church. I had other family members that played for our church as well. And so music was just a part of our daily life.
Right. And so you mentioned you played clarinet in the high school band. Do you have any memories of your middle school or high school band directors and perhaps the influence that they may have had on your career?
Oh, absolutely. With Tuskegee being a small town, we really didn't have a true middle school, true high school concept. So our schools were K through 8 or K through 7, K through 8, and then we had a 9th through 12th grade school. So I actually started playing clarinet somewhere in 7th grade and joined the high school band while I was in 8th grade, even though I was on a different campus. The high school band director at the time, William Brassfield, was his name. He's passed on now, but he taught all of my uncles and aunts, and it wasn't a matter of are you going to be in band, Myra? It was, what instrument are you going to play? And so I joined the high school band there, and he was an icon in the community. We weren't the richest of communities, but everyone loved the band in Tuskegee. And so everyone in that community either had a child in the band, or they were in the band themselves, or they were a band booster of some sort. And so because of that, we were able to do a lot of things that some people probably don't get to do in their high school career. So I guess a big influence was that my high school director always encouraged us to do things outside of our school. So whether it was auditioning for things like All-State or honor bands, or taking the band to travel to different places to perform, we were always able to use music to do that. And so that's what I learned from him, and that's what I try to instill in my kids here, that music can take you to all different places.
So you mentioned that in Tuskegee they had a K through 8 school. Do you have any thoughts about that model and the best ways to make that successful, that K through 8 model?
I've never taught in that model. I just grew up in that model. And so everything that I have, to say about that is coming from the 10-year-old, 9-year-old student perspective. So I'm not really sure, if I can have a true assessment of what it would be like. I do know that at the time, and you're talking about in the 70s and 80s, at the time we didn't have a true music program or band program at that school. There were a few of us who were able to go over to the high school to take lessons to learn how to play my instrument, and that's how I got into the high school band so quickly. But one thing I do remember is having music at the school, whether it was through the classroom teachers or someone coming in. And that started very, very early. So, I'm not really sure if I could really speak on that as a teacher side versus, just being a student. Mm-hmm.
Oh, so Myra, when did you know that you were going to be a musician or a music teacher? At what point did you sort of make that assessment of yourself?
Well, it really wasn't until college. I knew I wanted to do something with music, but I didn't know exactly what. I was pretty successful as a high school musician, and when I went to college, I actually thought I was going to be a math teacher. I came from a family of teachers, so I figured I would be a teacher too. But I thought I would be a math teacher. And then when I got to school, I figured out very fast that music was what I wanted to do instead of math.
And so why?
Well, up until college, I had never seen a female band director. Everywhere I went, there were males everywhere, whether it was at the football game and seeing the visiting bands or going out to different honor band festivals. At the University of Alabama, Catherine Scott was there, and it made me realize that, hey, this is something that I could actually do for a living. Not saying that there weren't other women in the field already, and of course there were. I just didn't see them and know them as a child coming from Tuskegee, Alabama. So when I saw that, she became a role model for me, and the rest is history.
So Myra, tell me about when you got out of college and your first teaching job or your first couple jobs. What were those early years like?
Well, my first job was in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I was always the one in college that never wanted to teach beginners because I was afraid that I would mess them up. And the job that I actually decided to take was teaching all beginners all day long. So it scared me. I did have a few offers, but that was the one that appealed the most to me. The way Tuscaloosa was structured at the time, they were under a national mandate for desegregation. So everyone in the city, all sixth graders went to one campus, seventh graders went to a different campus, eighth graders went to a different campus, and then Central High School was there. Ninth and 10th graders went to one campus, and 11th and 12th graders went to the other. So I was hired to start the band at the 6th grade school. And notice I said start the band. Band in Tuscaloosa started in 7th grade at the time. And I did my student teaching in that school system, and I was hired to start the program at West Lawn Middle School there in Tuscaloosa. So here I am, fresh out of college, not knowing anything, and I was hired to start a brand new program. And it was quite interesting. I knew very early on that I couldn't do things by myself, so I called my teachers, I called my classmates to come and help me figure this thing out. And I taught there for 3 years, and it was wonderful. I did realize, though, that middle school was not the level for me, even though we did have some success teaching at that level. But I really wanted to teach high school band, and so my next job after that was teaching high school.
I see. And so do you have any lessons that you took from teaching middle school to the high school ranks?
I think just from starting that program and literally not having a chair or an instrument, I had to figure out how to make things happen without a lot of materials or without a lot of resources. I did have money to spend, some money to spend, but I figured out rather quickly how to be creative with the resources that I had. So I think if I had to pick one thing, that would be it. To not make excuses, but figure out what you have and figure out what you can do with what you have.
Thinking about teachers who are in the beginning of their careers, do you have any advice that you learned early on that you maybe pass along to save someone the trouble or the pain that you suffered for it?
Yeah, well, actually, those two things. Not making excuses about what you don't have at whatever school you're teaching, not looking next door or down the street or to the next city and thinking the grass is always greener. There are issues everywhere you go, but figuring out what do you have and what can you do with what you have. And then the second thing is not being afraid to ask for help, whether it's going back to your college professors or going to the teachers next door, the teachers within your county or within your school system, and not thinking you can or have to do everything by yourself.
And so how about the move to Georgia, to Fayette County? It
was quite different. I taught for 9 years in Alabama, and for 6 of those, I taught high school, 4 in Tuskegee and 2 in Montgomery. And the schools where I taught in Tuskegee and Montgomery were 100% African American. So I moved here to Fayetteville, to Fayette County, Georgia, and it was the complete opposite. So it was a little bit of a culture shock for me. I marched corps style in college, but I'd never taught corps style marching band. And so now I'm moving to Fayette County. I wanted a change. I wanted a change of scenery, and I definitely got it here at Fayette County High School. And so I had to learn a different style of marching. But one thing that I realized is that the kids were the same regardless of where I taught. So that was easy. I actually came in here as the assistant director for 4 years. It was a bigger program than what I had in Alabama. I had been the head director everywhere I was for those 9 years. So making the adjustment to become an assistant was a little bit of an adjustment for me. But I soon realized that I didn't get all the phone calls and I didn't get all the, messages from parents. So I liked that, at least for a little while. So I took over the program myself.
Can you tell me about your awards? I mean, you have these amazing awards, and you were the National Band Director of the Year from NAfME for 2017 and 2018. What was that like to win that award? That's incredible.
Well, actually, it was a huge surprise. I had absolutely no idea. I found out when I was on a trip with my family to San Antonio, Texas. My son is a tuba player, and he was selected for the U.S. Army All-American Marching Band. So we were at the award ceremony for that, and back in January, and I sit down and I look at the program and I say, oh, well, that's nice. They're going to recognize a band director tonight. I think that's pretty cool. And I tell my husband that, who already knew.
Oh, my goodness.
And he goes, and he really didn't say much, but I didn't make anything of it. And sure enough, they called my name that night, and I look up on the screen, and there's my picture. And I had absolutely no idea. And I actually think I just sat there for a minute thinking, is this really happening? But it's been very nice to be recognized by NAfME, and it was a complete shock.
Sure.
But I found out that my family can keep secrets, because apparently they found out the day before I did.
I'd have been a blubbering idiot.
Yes.
Did you have to say anything?
No, I didn't have to say anything. But it was a huge area, a huge auditorium where they had the award ceremony. So I was called on stage and, received the award and did the handshake and everything, and came back off.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, Myra, the question then comes is what are you doing? What's your program look like? What's the secret sauce that you have?
Here at Fayette County?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if there's a secret sauce. I do know that one thing that I have tried to instill in the kids while here that I think that's worked really well is that band is a family, and that we have to be held accountable, and we have to hold each other accountable. And when that happens, things seem to gel together. So, the students here, the school is a lot more diverse than what it was when I first got here. And what I mean by that is it hasn't completely changed from, completely white school to a completely black school. We have kids from everywhere. So if you look at my band, you might see someone whose parents literally moved from Africa 6 months ago, to someone who lived in Germany, or your military kids who've lived literally all over the world. And I think that's what makes our community and our school so great. And so the band here is kind of like the melting pot for everyone in our school. Every sport is represented, every club and organization is represented, and all the kids in the band are leaders in those particular organizations. And that includes homecoming court, it includes class presidents and SGA officers and things like that. And all those kids actually come together here in the band. And so it's very well respected because of that. And the students have pride about being in the band program here. And so because of that, they perform well, they practice, they do what they need to do to make things happen. And I think we've experienced some success because of that.
Mm-hmm. And so how do you have the students hold each other accountable? In what ways does that happen?
Well, I guess it starts with student leadership, making sure that our student leaders know our expectations, and then holding the student leaders accountable. We have to hold the student leaders accountable to do what we need for them to do. And because of that, they tend to hold the students that they're responsible for accountable as well. So it kind of trickles down. But then we also tell our upperclassmen, you don't have to have a title to be a leader. So if you see a freshman or someone who's just coming into the program, struggling or needing a little help, just because you don't have the title section leader doesn't mean you can't go and help that person. It's okay to do that. So they still have a respect for those who are in those leadership positions, but they know, that we're only as strong as our weakest link. So it's up to you to help the weak link and not badger the weak link, but figure out what you can do to pull that person up, which pulls us all up.
One of the things I notice about the great programs is that there's a really strong student leadership component in these programs, in these bands. And we know that there are some students who demonstrate leadership traits from a very young age. I see it in fourth graders that I teach. How do you foster that? Is there anything you do to foster? Do you do camps or anything like that?
Yeah, we do have a leadership camp here on campus that the assistant director here is actually in charge of. He does a very good job with it. It's just a 1-week camp, but in order to apply for either one of our elected positions, which is, president, vice president for the band, things like that, the officer positions, they have to go through that camp. Or if you want an appointed position like section leader or something like that, you also have to go through that camp as well. And so what we try to do is give them a lot of tools to solve problems. Sometimes the kids get really frustrated with me because I don't give them all the answers to everything. And I do that on purpose because the problem solving skills is something that they have to survive, period. So we give them the tools, to put in their tool belt. And if they come to us with a problem, we try to tell them, all right, have you done this? Have you done this? And if they ever say no, then we send them back out and won't answer the question for them until they've tried everything and not given up to do that. So that's what we try to do, is just give them problem solving skills.
Mm-hmm. All right. So now this leads me to my next question. And you're the founder of the Athena Music and Leadership Camp. And so you describe this as a summer band and orchestra camp for middle and high school aged girls. And so can you tell me about that? That sounds amazing.
Well, we just had our 10th camp, our 10th year this past year. It started actually through a conversation I had with my husband. I would go out and do honor band clinics and things like that. And I would always have the girls come to me either telling me they had never seen or been under a woman conductor before, or they wanted to be a teacher or thought about being a band director, but because they were shorter or tiny or for whatever reason didn't have the confidence level, they didn't feel like they could be a high school director who told 6-foot boys what to do, and that the young men would actually follow their lead. They just didn't have that confidence. And so I would go home and complain basically to my husband, why is this? Why do these girls feel like that they can't do this? And so finally one day he said, well, what are you going to do about it? And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I hear the same story every time you go somewhere. What are you going to do about it? So we sat there and we brainstormed, and the next thing you know, we came up with the idea for the Athena Music Camp. And so we were at the University of West Georgia for the first 5 years of camp, and then we moved the site to Reinhardt University, which is north of Atlanta, for the last 5 years, and we'll be there next year. And then this past year, I was approached by the director of bands, Catherine Bushman, over at St. Cloud State University in Minnesota. And we had our first camp in Minnesota this past summer. So we're actually hoping to spread the word a little bit more about Athena and maybe open some more satellite camps throughout the United States in the next couple of years.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, when we started trying to figure out what we were going to do for the camp, I figured it had to be more than just music, because they could go anywhere to get a musical experience. So I wanted to give the kids an opportunity to take conducting, to take basic music theory, to talk, have the camp staff accessible to the kids throughout the entire camp, and not just come and teach and leave and be taken care of by college kids the rest of the time. So our camp staff is there and the kids interact with them 100% of the time. But the real important part is that we also do self-esteem and leadership classes with the girls. And it's not necessarily by a musician, but by a licensed professional counselor who comes in. And the girls, watching the transformation, especially of our younger ones who've only been to camp maybe once with us or twice, from the first day they come in to the last day, it's just unbelievable. It's just truly unbelievable. And we've had directors to come back to us and say, I don't know what she did at camp this summer, but she is not the same person that left when she left school here in May. So whatever you did, keep on doing it. And I think it's just, having the all-female staff, nurturing the girls, and you have girls as young as 10 years old, all the way up to kids who are about to graduate from high school. There, we have college music majors. We added that component several years ago, where they can come and not only be mentors for the middle and high schoolers, but they can learn from the camp faculty how to be band directors, how to be orchestra teachers, because they're there observing them that summer as well. And then we have faculty who've been teaching for 30, 35 years. So it's been great to seeing the level of musician from someone who's only played their instrument for 6 or 8 months all the way to someone who's been teaching for 35 years. It's really a special place.
Yeah. It sounds like it. And so if I had a student or someone who was listening had a student, a director or a teacher that wanted to come or that we think should come to the camp, what would the process be to sort of get that to happen?
Well, everything is done online. We have a website, athenacamp.com, and registration is online, and information about tuition, the camp faculty, everything that we've done is there. We also have photos from previous camps there, and most of the information is there. And then if there's something that the parents want to know about or the teachers want to know about that's not on the website, there's a way to contact us through the website as well.
Myra, that's a terrific program that you have there, and really something that sets you apart from everyone else. And I was looking at your bio, and I noticed that you have your doctorate. When did you have time to do that?
I did that when I first moved to Georgia. I went to the University of Southern Mississippi and studied with Dr. Tom Friskillo there. This was when Southern Miss had the program where you could do a lot of your classes in the summer. But I did take some time off to go and do a residency. And my school system was gracious enough to allow me to go to do my residency and still have a position when I came back to Fayetteville. So I was very, very happy they let me do that. And of course, I was able to complete a class or two while I was here in Fayetteville. But most of it was in person over the summer, and then during the time I took off for my residency. So that was about 10 years ago. Yeah.
So as a composer, one of the topics that's near and dear to my heart is commissions and what the kind of work that you've done with composers and other artists with your band program. Can you talk about that?
Yes. We've actually recently done two things. My wind ensemble played at our state convention a couple of years ago, I think 2 years ago, and we submitted a Mark Camphouse piece to the committee who chooses the bands for the state convention. A Movement for Rosa is what it was. And we were selected. So I thought it would be kind of cool to play another Camphouse piece and perhaps invite him to come down. And so he did. We did the piece that he wrote to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the I Have a Dream speech. And we worked it up and invited him to come down. He did a couple of rehearsals with us and conducted us on the concert when we played at the state convention. So we absolutely loved it. The students loved it. It was interesting. Every now and then he may make a minor change in the score, and the kids were like, "Can he do that?" And then they realized, yeah, he actually wrote the piece. He can do that if he wants to. So it was just wonderful for them. And I don't know why I hadn't done that before, but we did. Most recently, we are commissioning a piece right now, we meaning our school, with Johnny Benson, the former director at Auburn University, who's not really far from here. We're opening a new auditorium on our campus. And my principal, who just so happened to leave at the end of last year, he's at a different school now. He was a student at Auburn University and marched in the marching band there. And he knew Dr. Vinson. So he was very supportive of commissioning a piece for the opening of our auditorium and suggested that we ask him to write that piece. And so he did. We just received it about 2 weeks ago. It's called When Nothing Else Will. And it's based on a quote that Michelle Obama said during one of her speeches. So we are excited about that, and it will be premiered sometime next semester during the grand opening of our auditorium.
Oh, that's super cool.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the kids get out of commissions and these experiences with composers?
I think sometimes that the students always think that composers aren't real people, that they aren't alive. And I know, other than pictures, I just think it's the real people thing. So actually being able to see and shake the hand of someone and get an autograph, I think that's really, really special. And it also lets them know that, this is something that you can grow up to become as well. So it's interesting, after Mark Camphouse came down, I started having students to say, hey, I think I want to try writing some things, and they have. So I think that was a real positive coming from that. I guess I kind of think of it as when I went to school and didn't realize I could be a band director until I saw a band director that happened to be a woman. I think that's probably what happened with my students when they saw him and saw a real composer, and it wasn't just a name on a piece of paper, and then they thought, hey, this is something I could actually do.
Myra, I'm going to tread a little bit carefully here, again, because of the sensitivity of the issue. But one of the things I've noticed as I've been doing these interviews is I'm really interested in bringing a diverse set of guests to my listeners. Do you have any thoughts about what we can do to encourage young women of color to write more music and to become composers?
Yeah, I don't know if I have an answer for that. It may just go back to what I said about my students seeing Mark Camphouse and me seeing Catherine Scott, at 16, 17 years old. I think the ones who exist may need to be brought to the forefront more often and brought in front of the students so the students can realize, hey, I can do this too. It may be just as simple as that. I don't know.
I'd like to take a short break from our episode to invite you to listen to my music at markjconner.com. I am always seeking opportunities for collaboration. If you are interested in commissioning a new piece of music for me, having me work with your students in person or via Skype, or to just say hello, please drop me a line at markjconner@gmail.com or through the contact form on my website. So, Myra, where do you draw the line between healthy and unhealthy competition in music?
Oh, wow. I think competition can be a good thing. I think the healthy versus the unhealthy always comes from the top. I believe that your band, your ensemble is a reflection of you. So how you personally view it is how your band is going to view it, and how your parents and how your community is going to view it. I try to tell the students, yes, we want to be competitive. Yes, we want to be better than yesterday. But at the same time, we're going to respect all of the students and all of the time and effort and hard work that they have put into it as well. And if you've performed your best and you've competed against yourself and you've done better than yesterday, then you've succeeded. And I think we've done a good job. Now, we've had our share of, first places, and we've had our share of not first places as well. And they know that crying and all of this nonsense, if we don't win something, is completely unacceptable. That you learn from every single situation, good or bad. And I think that's where the healthy part comes in, because you're not going to win everything. You're not going to win every job that you interview for. So the students need to learn how to not win, if that makes sense. I think it becomes unhealthy when it's all about the trophies and all about winning, and it's all about, by any means necessary. I think that's the problem, where, if band is your life and nothing else, that, it may be for us as teachers, but for these students, it's one aspect of their life, and they may or may not make it a career. So I think we as teachers, we have to be the ones to monitor that, because our students and our parents are only going to do what we're modeling for them.
Yeah, so you mentioned band being life, and one of the challenges that many music teachers face is the ability to get away from work. And how do you find work-life balance in your own life?
Wow, that was very, very hard for me early on. I figured out, though, that the more organized I am at work, the more time I will have outside of work. My husband and I have one son, and I think having a child maybe put that into better perspective for me than before we had our son. because we were in charge of a person. We had to raise this person. And even though I have a couple of hundred kids here that I have to help raise as well, if you think of a sense of community, there's one that I'm truly, truly responsible for, and that's my own. And so I didn't really have a choice to figure that part out. Now, as he got older and got in music and was in my band program, I was able I probably recessed a little bit with that work-life balance thing because he was here with me. But now that we're empty nesters, it's actually making me do a little bit more as far as my work-life balance. Again, as far as having more of the life than the work. So I think it comes to being organized. I think when I'm unorganized at work or I feel like I am, that's when I tend to spend more time here. And so I try to avoid that.
Yeah, it's funny. I just started a new job. I'd been a college professor for years. And I decided that I was going to take a job teaching beginning band again, just to kind of scratch an itch that I have. Yeah. But I find myself, I only teach these kids twice a week, and I'm only there part-time, but I'm still like the last car out of the parking lot on the 2 days that I'm there because I'm trying to get organized.
Right, yeah.
It's crazy. Someone once told me there's no such thing as a part-time band director. It's really true.
Right. Yeah. I totally agree. Totally agree.
All right, Myra. So this is the big question of the podcast, and that's what are the challenges facing music education, and how can we best meet them?
I think that sometimes, we hear a lot that music education is dying, band is dying, things like that. But then you look around and you see all these kids who are participating in band programs and orchestra programs everywhere. And I think sometimes talking about it in a negative way may hurt us more than we realize. And so I think, a lot of the positive publicity is what will help keep our programs going. Positive things that we're doing, getting it out in the community, as opposed to talking about what we don't have, talking about what we can't do. I think if we talk a little bit more about what we can do and all the positive impacts that are happening with our programs in our communities, then maybe that support that some of us may be looking for may come because they understand why we need the support. And if, we tend to talk down a little bit about programs and what we don't have and our administrators and things like that, who wants to support the negative stuff? Kind of a weird way to answer the question, but I just don't want us to be our own worst enemies because we're speaking negativity into everything. The programs that I see as I travel all have the most positive directors, the most positive kids, and they speak positivity into everything that they do. And, only complain to the people who can help you so they can understand, get your why out there. Why does your program exist? And make sure that people come on board with the reason why you're doing things.
What advice would you give your younger self, perhaps if you're standing on your high school graduation and you're looking across at yourself? What would you say?
Now, that's a really hard question. I would tell myself to be more confident in what you're doing and what you know a lot earlier than what actually happened. I would say don't be afraid to bring people in and assess your program and don't take things personally. I had to learn how to do that. I was always afraid to bring people in. I wasn't afraid to bring people in to help the kids, but I was always a little bit nervous to bring people in to help me. So when I decided that, okay, it's okay to bring people in and give you an assessment or you're conducting or you're teaching or, how you can say things better. When I learned how to do that and not take things personally, but make it more about business, then I became a better teacher. So I guess I would tell my younger self, immediately do that and don't wait. Yeah.
All right, Myra. Now, you told me that you were nervous about this question, and I don't quite think you should be, because I think your answer is going to be just fine. And so if you had a choice, what would be the final work for wind ensemble or band that you would conduct, and why?
That I would conduct? Wow. I don't know the answer to that question. It's kind of weird. I played March Slav when I was in high school all-state band. And I haven't done it with my own band, but I've always loved that. And my son got a chance to play it at All-State a couple of years ago. And we're a weird kind of musical family, and he would just blast it, and we would just have fun at home, just conducting all the parts, just having fun with the music. So because I have that connection with that from earlier on, and then with my son, I think I would choose that piece.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. So would you want to conduct the orchestral version or the band version?
Ooh. Well, I think if I said orchestral version, then all of my band friends would have my head. So I better say the band version.
Yeah. Is your son,
even though my son played it in an orchestra, yeah.
Is your son going to continue in music professionally or in college?
Yes, actually, he's a music performance major at the University of Southern California. He's a tuba player.
Oh, how about that? Good for him.
Yeah, he's a freshman. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yes.
Wow, all the way to the Thornton School. Was that hard?
All the way to Thornton. I keep telling myself it's only a 4.5-hour plane ride. So it doesn't seem like it's so far away because I can get to him in 4.5 hours if I needed to, which is a lot closer than driving to some of the other schools he was looking at. So that's what I keep telling myself. But he has no fear. I mean, he's been going to different places during the summer, all through high school, the summer music camps and things like that. So it's no big deal for him. I think we as parents probably have had a tougher time adjusting than he has. Sure.
I get that. Myra, is there anything coming up that you'd like to share or promote?
Well, you did mention the Athena camp, and I guess if I had to answer that question, that would be the one thing. We would love to find different sites throughout the country to bring that camp to different universities and perhaps make it at a regional camp. So we can affect more young ladies across the country. So that would be the answer for me for that.
Myra, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, my email address is on our school's website, Fayette County High School in Fayetteville, Georgia, and rhoden.myra@mail.fcboe.org. Interestingly enough, if you Google my name, my school will come up and probably Athena as well. And so through those two websites, you can find me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Myra, thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope everything was okay.
Everything was great.